The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, threatening legal action over her unauthorized pool installation. Sarah Martinez had spent her life savings on her dream home and backyard oasis, only to be told she was in violation of HOA, regulations she'd never agreed to follow. But when she dug deeper into the property records, what she discovered would turn her quiet suburban street into a battlefield damned expose, conspiracy that had been hiding in plain sight for over a decade. Sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free, it destroys everything around you. Sarah Martinez's hands trembled as she held the certified letter, the morning coffee growing cold on her kitchen counter. Through the window, she could see her newly installed pool sparkling in the September sunlight, the culmination of 2 years of saving every penny from her teaching salary. Dear Ms. Martinez, the letter began in sterile legal language. It has come to the attention of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association that you have installed an in-ground swimming pool without proper approval from the Architectural Review Committee. This constitutes a violation of Section 4.7 of the CC&Rs. The words blurred together as Sarah's heart pounded. HOA, she'd never heard of any homeowners association when she bought the house 3 years ago. Her real estate agent, Janet Morrison, had specifically mentioned it was one of the benefits of the property: no HOA fees, no restrictions. The letter was signed by someone named Patricia Whitmore, HOA president, with a phone number and address. Just 4 blocks away, Sarah grabbed her phone and dialed immediately. Willowbrook Estates, HOA, Patricia speaking. The voice was crisp, professional, with an underlying tone of authority that immediately put Sarah on edge. This is Sarah Martinez. I just received a letter about my pool being in violation. Ah, yes, Ms. Martinez. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. Your pool installation is completely unauthorized. You'll need to appear before the board next Tuesday at 7 p.m. to discuss remediation. Wait, hold on. Sarah's voice rose. I was never told this property was part of an HOA. I never signed any agreement, ma'am. Ignorance of the CC&Rs is not an excuse. Your property at 1247 Maple Street has been part of this association since 2015. The previous owner failed to inform you, but that doesn't negate your obligations. Sarah felt the room spin slightly. The previous owner, Mr. Chen, never mentioned anything about an HOA. I'm not here to discuss the incompetence of your real estate transaction, Ms. Martinez. I'm here to inform you that your pool is in violation, and if you don't appear before the board, will be forced to pursue legal action. The fine is currently at $500 and accruing daily. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, then at the letter, then out at her pool. She'd worked 3 jobs the summer before last to afford it. She'd spent weekends researching contractors, getting permits from the city, ensuring everything was above board. The pool represented more than just a backyard amenity. It was proof she'd made it, that a single woman could buy a house and create something beautiful on her own terms. Now some woman she'd never met was threatening to take it all away. Sarah drove to the county recorder's office during her lunch break, her hand still shaking from the morning's phone call. The clerk, a tired-looking woman named Dolores, helped her navigate the computer system to pull up her property records. Here we go, Dolores said, pointing at the screen. 1247 Maple Street. Purchased by Sarah Martinez in June 2022 for $385,000. Does it show anything about an HOA? Any covenants or restrictions? Dolores clicked through several screens. Let me check the deed and the CC&RS database. ... double quotes, she frowned. That's odd. What's odd? Well, there's no record of HOA incorporation for your street address. The only Willowbrook Estates HOA I see covers properties on Elm, Oak, and Birch Streets, but not Maple. When did you say this HOA was established? The woman on the phone said 2015. Dolores typed rapidly. I'm not seeing any filing from 2015 for an expansion of the Willowbrook HOA boundaries, and your deed doesn't reference any restrictive covenants. Sarah felt a spark of hope. So I'm not part of the HOA. Based on what I'm seeing here, no, but let me print out your deed and the original CC&Rs for the neighborhood. You might want to have a lawyer look at this. As Sarah waited for the documents to print, she noticed a man in an expensive suit hovering near the counter, seemingly interested in their conversation. When she glanced in his direction, he quickly looked away and busied himself with some papers. 20 minutes later, Sarah sat in her car in the parking lot, reading through the documents. Her deed was clear no mention of any homeowners association. The original Willowbrook Estates, CC&Rs, filed in 2010, specifically listed the covered properties, and Maple Street wasn't among them. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Ms. Martinez. This is Tom Chen, the previous owner of your house. I heard you might be having some trouble with Patricia Whitmore." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "Mr. Chen, how did you word? Travels fast in small neighborhoods. Look, I think we need to talk. Can you meet me at the Starbucks on 5th Street in an hour?" Tom Chen looked older than Sarah remembered from their brief encounters during the house sale. His face was drawn, worried, and he kept glancing around the coffee shop as if expecting someone to overhear their conversation. "I should have warned you," he said without preamble. "Patricia Whitmore has been trying to force properties into her HOA for years. She tried it with me, too, but I fought back." "What do you mean forced?" Tom leaned forward. "She's been sending threatening letters to homeowners on streets that were never part of the original HOA. She claims there was some amendment in 2015 that expanded the boundaries, but I've never seen legitimate documentation. Why didn't you tell me this when I bought the house?" "Because I thought I'd won." I hadn't heard from her in over a year. I figured she'd moved on to other targets. Tom's expression darkened, but Patricia Whitmore doesn't give up easily. She's got connections at City Hall, and she's not above using them to get what she wants. Sarah felt a chill. What kind of connections? Her husband is a city councilman. Her brother-in-law works for the planning department. When she wants something done, it gets done. Tom reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. "This is everything I gathered when I fought her. Property records, email exchanges, even recordings of phone calls." Sarah opened the folder and found dozens of documents. Letters, similar to hers, sent to other homeowners on Maple Street. Email exchanges between Patricia and various city officials. And, most damning, a recorded phone conversation where Patricia discussed expanding the association's reach to increase revenue streams. "She's been running this scam for years," Tom continued. "The original HOA covers maybe 40 houses, but she's been claiming jurisdiction over twice that many, collecting fees and fines from people who think they have no choice but to pay." How is she getting away with this? Because most people don't know how to fight back. They get scared by the legal threats and pay up, and the few who do fight usually give up when they realize how connected she is. Sarah studied the documents. Her anger building. Well, she picked the wrong teacher to mess with. Tom smiled grimly. "I was hoping you'd say that. But Sarah, you need to understand Patricia doesn't just go after your property. She goes after your life, your job, your reputation, your relationships. She's destroyed people who've crossed her. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to prepare you. Because if you're really going to fight this, you need to know it's going to get ugly before it gets better." Sarah closed the folder and looked Tom in the eye. "Then let's get ugly." That evening, Sarah called Patricia Whitmore back. "Patricia, this is Sarah Martinez. I've been doing some research. Ms. Martinez, I trust you're calling to discuss your appearance before the board. Actually, I'm calling to inform you that I won't be appearing before any board, because my property isn't part of your HOA. I've checked the county records, and there's no legitimate documentation showing Maple Street was ever included in the Willowbrook Estates boundaries." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "Ms. Martinez, I think you're confused. The expansion was properly filed, and show me the documentation. I beg your pardon, show me the legally filed amendment that added Maple Street to your HOA, because I can't find it anywhere in the public records." Patricia's voice took on a harder edge. "Ms. Martinez, I don't appreciate your tone. The association has legitimate authority over your property, and if you continue to be uncooperative, we'll have no choice but to pursue all available legal remedies. Go ahead and try." Sarah's voice was steady now, her fear replaced by righteous anger. "But while you're at it, maybe you can explain to the district attorney why you've been collecting money from people who were never part of your association in the first place." The line went dead. Sarah set down her phone and walked to her back door, looking out at her pool. The underwater lights had just come on, casting a blue glow across the water. Tomorrow, she'd start making some phone calls of her own. She'd contact the other homeowners Tom had mentioned, the ones who'd been receiving similar letters. She'd reach out to a lawyer, maybe even the local newspaper. Patricia Whitmore had made a mistake. She'd targeted someone who knew how. Sarah arrived at school the next morning with dark circles under her eyes and a fire in her belly. She'd spent the night researching everything she could find about Patricia Whitmore, the Willowbrook Estates, HOA, and property law in her state. What she'd discovered made her stomach turn. Patricia Whitmore wasn't just running a scam, she was running an empire. Her husband, Councilman Richard Whitmore, had been instrumental in passing several city ordinances that strengthened HOA enforcement powers. Her brother-in-law, David Brennan, worked in the planning department and had been approving building permits with unusual speed for properties in Patricia's expanded territory, then retroactively claiming violations when homeowners couldn't produce HOA approval they'd never needed. The scheme was elegant in its cruelty. Patricia would claim jurisdiction over properties that had never been part of the HOA, then either collect bogus fees from intimidated homeowners or fine them for violations of rules they'd never agreed to follow. Those who fought back found themselves tangled in legal battles they couldn't afford, facing a woman with unlimited resources and city hall connections. But Sarah had found something Patricia didn't expect: a paper trail. During her lunch break, Sarah drove to the address Tom Chen had given her for Maria Santos, another Maple Street homeowner who'd received similar letters. The small house sat behind an immaculate garden with children's toys scattered across the front lawn. Maria answered the door with a baby on her hip and suspicion in her eyes. She was younger than Sarah had expected, probably in her late 20s, with the exhausted look of a working mother stretched too thin. "You're not from the HOA, are you?" Maria asked before Sarah could introduce herself. "God, no. I'm Sarah Martinez. I live at 1247. I got the same letter you did." Maria's shoulders sagged with relief. "Come in, please. I was hoping someone else would fight back." The living room was clean but cluttered, with the comfortable chaos of a family with young children. Maria settled the baby in a bouncer and gestured for Sarah to sit on the couch. "When did you first hear from Patricia Whitmore?" Sarah asked. "About 6 months ago. She sent a letter saying we needed to get approval for the fence my husband built around our backyard. Then another letter about our vegetable garden being a non-conforming landscape modification." Maria's voice cracked slightly. "We've already paid $1,200 in fines." Sarah's heart sank. "Maria, you didn't have to pay those. We couldn't afford a lawyer," Patricia said. "If we didn't pay, she'd put a lien on our house. We have 3 kids, Sarah. We couldn't risk losing our home." "She can't put a lien on your house for HOA violations if you're not actually in the HOA." Maria stared at her. "What do you mean?" Sarah pulled out the folder Tom had given her and spread the documents across the coffee table. Maple Street was never included in the Willowbrook Estates HOA boundaries. Patricia's been running a scam, collecting money from people who don't owe her anything. Maria's face went through a series of emotions: confusion, hope, and finally, blazing anger. "You mean we gave that woman $1,200 for nothing?" "I'm afraid so. But we're going to get it back over the next hour," Sarah explained. Everything she'd learned. Maria listened intently, occasionally asking questions, her anger building with each revelation. By the time Sarah finished, Maria was pacing the living room, her hands clenched into fists. "That bitch," Maria said, then immediately looked embarrassed. "Sorry, I don't apologize. She is a bitch. And she's about to find out what happens when you mess with working mothers and school teachers." They spent another hour making a list of other Maple Street homeowners who might have received similar letters. Maria knew most of the neighbors. Having organized several block parties since moving in 2 years earlier, she promised to make some calls and see who else had been targeted. As Sarah prepared to leave, Maria grabbed her arm. "Sarah, you need to be careful. After we paid the fines, I started asking questions around the neighborhood. Patricia Whitmore doesn't just threaten people, she follows through. The Johnsons at the end of the block had their business license mysteriously revoked after they refused to pay. The Garcias got cited for 16 different code violations in 1 week. Are you saying she's corrupt? I'm saying she's connected, and she's not going to let this go quietly." That evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, a legal pad, and 3 cups of coffee. She'd already received calls from Maria and 2 other homeowners, the Patel family and an elderly man named Frank Morrison. All had received letters. All had been intimidated into paying fines or fees, and all were ready to fight back. Sarah was deep in research when her doorbell rang. She glanced at the clock. 9:30 p.m. Too late for casual visitors. Through the peephole, she saw a man in a dark suit standing on her front porch. He looked official, serious, and vaguely threatening. Sarah kept the chain lock engaged as she opened the door. "Ms. Martinez." "I'm Detective Ray Collins with the Sheriff's Department. I need to ask you a few questions about some allegations you've been making." Sarah's blood went cold. "What allegations?" "We've received a complaint that you've been harassing members of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association, making false accusations, threatening litigation, that sort of thing." "I haven't harassed anyone. I've been researching whether my property is actually subject to HOA jurisdiction." Detective Collins pulled out a small notebook. "According to the complaint, you've been contacting multiple homeowners, trying to convince them not to pay legitimate fines and fees. That could be considered interference with lawful business operations." Sarah felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Patricia was using the police to intimidate her. "Detective, I've done nothing illegal. I've been researching public records and sharing information with my neighbors. I'm sure you have, but Ms. Whitmore seems to think you're crossing some lines. She's asked me to advise you that continued harassment could result in formal charges." "Harassment?" "I called her once, and I spoke to a few neighbors. If that's harassment, then every person who's ever had a disagreement is a criminal." Detective Collins closed his notebook. "Look, Ms. Martinez, I'm just delivering a message. Ms. Whitmore is well respected in this community. She's been running that HOA for over a decade without any problems. Maybe you should consider that there might be some misunderstanding on your part." Sarah stared at him. "Are you suggesting I should just pay fines for violations of rules I never agreed to follow? I'm suggesting you might want to work with the HOA instead of against it. These things have a way of escalating, and that doesn't usually end well for the individual homeowner." After Detective Collins left, Sarah doubled her door and closed all the blinds. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear, it was from rage. Patricia Whitmore had just sent the police to her door like some kind of mob boss. The woman was more brazen than Sarah had imagined. Sarah picked up her phone and called Tom Chen. "They sent a cop to my door," she said without preamble. Tom sighed. "Collins, you know him. Ray Collins has been Patricia's go-to intimidation tactic for years. He's not corrupt, exactly, but he's cooperative. Patricia makes a big donation to the Police Benevolent Fund every year, and Detective Collins makes sure to follow up on her complaints very thoroughly. This is insane. She's using public resources to protect her scam. Now you're getting it. This isn't just about HOA fees, Sarah. This is about power. Patricia's built herself a little kingdom, and she's not going to let anyone threaten it." Sarah paced her kitchen, thinking, "Tom, how many homeowners do you think she's scammed over the years?" "On Maple Street, probably 8 or 10 families. "But if you're talking about her whole operation," Tom paused, "I'd guess she's collected illegal fees from at least 50 families over the past decade, maybe more." "Jesus, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, at least. And that's not counting the bribes and kickbacks she's probably paying to keep her City Hall connections happy." Sarah stopped pacing. "Tom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Are you backing out? Because if Patricia's willing to send the police after me for making a few phone calls, she's going to come after you too when she realizes you're helping me." The silence stretched for several seconds. Then Tom laughed, a bitter sound. "Sarah, that woman tried to steal my house from me. She threatened my wife, harassed my kids, and made our lives hell for 2 years. I've been waiting for someone with the guts to take her on. I'm not backing down. Good, because I think I know how to beat her." The next morning, Sarah took a personal day from school and drove to the state capitol. She'd spent the night researching consumer protection laws, RICO statutes, and civil rights violations. Patricia Whitmore wasn't just running a small-time scam, she was operating a criminal enterprise under the color of authority. The Attorney General's office was housed in a granite building downtown, with a kind of intimidating architecture designed to make citizens feel small. But Sarah had taught high school for 8 years. She wasn't easily intimidated by authority. Figures, The receptionist directed her to the Consumer Protection Division, where she was eventually seen by a hurried-looking prosecutor named David Kim. He listened politely as Sarah explained the situation. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh had the kind of sharp, intelligent eyes that made people confess things they hadn't planned to say. She listened to Sarah's story without interruption, occasionally making notes in a leather-bound notebook, her expression growing more intense with each detail. "Ms. Martinez, what you're describing sounds like a classic RICO case," Agent Walsh said when Sarah finished. "Racketeering, conspiracy, mail fraud, extortion under color of law. If we can prove the pattern of criminal activity and the conspiracy, with city officials, we're looking at serious federal charges." Sarah felt a mixture of relief and terror. Relief that someone in authority was taking her seriously, terror at the implications of what she'd uncovered. "What happens now? Now we investigate. But I need you to understand something: federal investigations take time. We're talking months, possibly years. And once we start, there's no guarantee we'll be able to protect you from retaliation." "What kind of retaliation?" Agent Walsh's expression darkened. "Based on what you've told me, Patricia Whitmore has been running this operation for over a decade. She's got connections throughout the municipal government, a compliant police detective, and God knows how much money at her disposal. People like that don't go down quietly." Sarah thought about the anonymous threat text, the late-night visit. From Detective Collins, the exhausted look in Maria Santos's eyes. She's already retaliating. The question is whether I'm going to let her get away with it. "I was hoping you'd say that." Agent Walsh smiled grimly. "Because I'm going to need your help. We'll need you to document everything, every contact, every threat, every interaction with city officials. And we'll need you to help us identify other victims." Sarah spent the next 3 hours in the FBI office, going through every document she'd collected and providing a detailed timeline of events. Agent Walsh recorded everything, asked pointed questions, and gradually painted a picture of a criminal enterprise that was far more sophisticated than Sarah had imagined. "The beauty of her scheme," Agent Walsh explained, "is that she's been operating in a legal gray area. HOAs do have significant power. She's been exploiting that ignorance while using her connections to give her actions the appearance of legitimacy." "But it's still fraud, right? Taking money from people under false pretenses?" "Absolutely. But proving fraud requires demonstrating intent to deceive, and that's where things get complicated. She's probably got plausible deniability built into every aspect of her operation." Agent Walsh paused. "That's why we need to catch her in the act." Sarah felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we need to set up a situation where she commits a crime we can document in real time, something that clearly shows her intent to defraud. You want me to be bait? I want you to be yourself. Keep fighting her. Keep asking questions. Keep rallying your neighbors. But this time, we'll be watching and listening." Sarah left the FBI office with a new phone containing recording software and a deep sense of unease. She was no longer just a homeowner fighting an HOA dispute. She was an undercover federal informant, targeting a criminal conspiracy. The thought should have been empowering, but instead it felt terrifying. Her phone rang as she sat in her car. In the parking lot, Maria Santos, her voice tight with panic. "Sarah, something's wrong. Really wrong. What happened?" "Child Protective Services showed up at my house an hour ago. They said they received an anonymous report about unsafe living conditions. They're interviewing my kids, Sarah. They're talking about removing them from the home." Sarah's blood went cold. "Where are you now?" "Still at the house." "The social worker is upstairs with Miguel, asking him about whether mommy and daddy fight, whether there's enough food, feels safe." Maria's voice broke. "Sarah, my house is spotless. My children are healthy and happy. Someone's trying to destroy my family. I'm coming over." "No, don't." "They asked if I'd been influenced by outside agitators to stop paying my HOA fees." "Sarah, they know about our conversation. They know you're helping me fight this." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was her fault. She'd dragged Maria into this fight, and now Patricia was, using the nuclear option threatening to take away her children. "Maria, listen to me. Don't say anything else to them without a lawyer present. Call the number I'm about to text you. It's a family law attorney who specializes in CPS cases. Her name is Rachel Kim, and she's good. Yes, you can, because we're going to make Patricia Whitmore pay for everything she's done. After hanging up with Maria, Sarah sat in her car for several minutes, processing what had just happened. Patricia wasn't just escalating, she was declaring war. Using Child Protective Services as a weapon against a mother of 3 was beyond corrupt. It was evil. Sarah drove home and immediately called Agent Walsh, who listened to the Maria Santos situation with growing anger. That's a new low, even for someone like Whitmore, Agent Walsh said. Using CPS as a retaliation tool is a federal civil rights violation. We can add that to the charges. Can you help Maria? I can make some calls. But Sarah, you need to understand, this is exactly what I was warning you about. She's going to keep escalating until she either destroys you or you destroy her. That evening, Sarah's doorbell rang again. This time, she was expecting trouble, but instead she found Tom Chen standing on her porch with a box of documents and a grim expression. I heard about Maria Santos, he said without preamble. Patricia's crossed a line. She's not just stealing money anymore, she's destroying families. Sarah let him in, and Tom spread the contents of his box across her dining room table. More documents, more evidence, more proof of Patricia's criminal enterprise. I've been in contact with some of the other victims, Tom said, families who moved away rather than keep fighting. I've got records of at least 30 families who've paid illegal fees over the past 5 years. Total amount stolen, over $200,000. Sarah stared at the documents. Jesus Christ, it gets worse. I found records of properties that Patricia claimed were part of the HOA, but were actually outside the original boundaries. She's been collecting monthly dues from people who were never members, sometimes for years. How did you get all this? Tom's expression was dark. I may have done some things that weren't entirely legal. Let's just say Patricia isn't the only one with connections. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your friends, children, are very cute. It would be a shame if something happened to them. Sarah showed the message to Tom, who went pale. That's it, he said. I'm calling everyone. Every victim, every family she's stolen from, every person who's been too scared to fight back. It's time to end this. Over the next 2 hours, Sarah's house became an impromptu war room. Tom made calls while Sarah documented everything for Agent Walsh. Maria Santos arrived after the CPS worker left, exhausted but determined to fight. Frank Morrison, the elderly man from down the street, brought coffee and a lifetime of accumulated rage at bullies who prey on the vulnerable. 10 p.m., they had a list of 47 families who had been victimized by Patricia Whitmore's fake HOA expansion. The total amount stolen exceeded $300,000. More importantly, they had victims willing to testify, documentation of the crimes, and federal law enforcement ready to act. She made a mistake going after Maria's children, Tom said as they prepared to leave. Up until now, this was about money, but threatening kids, that's going to make people fight who never would have fought before. Sarah nodded, but she was thinking about something else. Patricia Whitmore was smart, connected, and ruthless. She'd been running this operation for years without getting caught. The CPS attack on Maria wasn't just escalation, it was a message, a demonstration of how far she was willing to go to protect her empire, which meant Sarah and her allies were in more danger than they realized. After everyone left, Sarah sat in her kitchen, staring at her phone. The FBI wanted her to keep pushing, to provoke Patricia into making mistakes that could be documented, but every time she pushed, Patricia pushed back harder, and innocent people got hurt. Maria's children had been questioned by social workers because Sarah had encouraged their mother to fight back. What would happen next? What would Patricia do if she felt truly cornered? Sarah walked to her back door and looked out at her pool, the water reflecting the house lights like a mirror. 3 days ago, this had all been about whether she needed HOA approval for her backyard renovation. Now she was at the center of a federal investigation into municipal corruption. And the woman she was fighting had just threatened children. Her phone rang. Agent Walsh. Sarah, we got the CPS report dismissed. Turns out, the social worker who filed it has been doing favors for Patricia Whitmore for years. She's looking at her own federal charges now. That's good news. It is, but I'm calling because we intercepted some communications that suggest Patricia's planning something big. She knows we're investigating her, and she's not going down without a fight." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "What? Kind of something big. We're not sure yet. But Sarah, I need you to be very careful. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't answer your door without knowing who's there. And if anything feels wrong, call me immediately." After hanging, Sarah woke to the sound of sirens. At 3:47 a.m., through her bedroom window, she could see red and blue lights reflecting off the houses across the street. Her heart hammering, she threw on a robe and stepped onto her front porch. The fire trucks were parked outside Maria Santos's house. Sarah ran across the street in her bare feet, joining a crowd of neighbors who'd emerged to watch the firefighters work. The house wasn't engulfed smoke, was pouring from what looked like the garage, and the flames seemed contained. But Maria stood on the sidewalk in her pajamas, clutching her youngest child, while her two older kids clung to her legs, all of them crying. Maria, Sarah, pushed through the crowd. "What happened? Is everyone okay?" "Someone threw something through the garage window," Maria said, her voice hollow with shock. "A bottle with gasoline. If the smoke alarm hadn't woken us up, ... double quotes, she couldn't finish the sentence. Fire Captain Rodriguez approached them, his expression grim. "Ma'am, this was definitely arson. We found the remains of a Molotov cocktail. Do you have any idea who might want to hurt your family?" Sarah and Maria exchanged glances. They both knew exactly who was behind this, but proving it would be another matter entirely. "Captain, she's been receiving threats related to a property dispute," Sarah said carefully. "There's an ongoing federal investigation." "Federal, Captain." Rodriguez's eyebrows rose. "You need to call the FBI immediately. This isn't just arson, it's domestic terrorism." Agent Walsh arrived within an hour, along with a full forensics team that treated Maria's garage like a crime scene. Sarah watched from across the street as they photographed everything, collected samples, and interviewed neighbors. The professionalism was reassuring, but Sarah couldn't shake the image of Maria's children crying on the sidewalk. Patricia Whitmore had just tried to burn down a house with 3 children inside. "This changes everything," Agent Walsh told Sarah as they stood outside Maria's house at dawn. "Arson is a violent felony. If we can connect this to Whitmore, she's looking at federal terrorism charges. If you can connect it, she's not stupid enough to throw the bottle herself. No, but she's stupid enough to have ordered it. People who commit crimes like this usually can't resist bragging about their power. We just need to get her talking." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. "You want me to confront her? I want you to push her buttons, make her angry, make her feel threatened, make her say something incriminating while you're wearing a wire. Agent Walsh, she just tried to kill a family. What do you think she'd do to me? We'll have backup everywhere. You'll never be out of our sight." Sarah looked at the charred remains of Maria's garage, at the scorch marks on the siding where flames had licked at the house itself. 3 children had almost died because Sarah had encouraged their mother to fight back against a criminal enterprise. "When do we do this?" That afternoon, Sarah drove to Patricia Whitmore's house for the first time. The address was in Hillcrest Estates, the most expensive neighborhood in the county, where houses started at $1 million and went up from there. Patricia's home was a sprawling Tudor mansion with perfectly manicured grounds and a circular driveway. Sarah parked her 10-year-old Honda between a Mercedes and a BMW, feeling absurdly out of place. The wire Agent Walsh had fitted her with felt bulky and obvious, though she'd been assured it was undetectable. Her phone was recording as backup, and she knew FBI surveillance teams were positioned throughout the neighborhood. Still, as she walked up the stone pathway to Patricia's front door, Sarah felt like she was walking into a predator's den. Patricia answered the door herself, dressed in an expensive tracksuit that probably cost more than Sarah made in a month. She was younger than Sarah had expected, maybe early 50s, with the kind of aggressive attractiveness that came from expensive cosmetic procedures and personal trainers. "Ms. Martinez, I was wondering when you'd have the courage to face me. Directly, we need to talk." Patricia stepped aside with an exaggerated gesture of hospitality. "By all means, come into my home. I'm curious to hear what the ringleader of this little rebellion has to say." The interior of the house was exactly what Sarah had expected: expensive, cold, and designed to intimidate. Patricia led her to a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking a pool that made Sarah's backyard renovation look like a kiddie pool. "You have a beautiful home," Sarah said, settling into a leather chair that probably cost more than her car. Thank you. It's amazing what you can afford when you understand how to work within the system. Patricia's smile was sharp, something you clearly haven't learned. Is that what you call it? Working within the system? I call it understanding that rules exist for a reason, and that people who follow the rules are rewarded, while people who break them are punished. Sarah leaned forward. What rules did Maria Santos break? What rules did her children break when someone threw a firebomb at their house last night? Patricia's expression didn't change, but Sarah caught a flicker of something satisfaction in her eyes. I heard about that unfortunate incident. It's terrible when people get caught up in situations beyond their control. You're not even going to pretend you weren't involved. Ms. Martinez, I have no idea what you're implying. I was at home all evening with my husband, who can verify my whereabouts. Patricia stood and walked to the window. But I will say this, when people make poor choices, bad things tend to happen to them. Sarah felt her anger rising, which was exactly what Agent Walsh had told her to do. Let Patricia think she was winning. Let her get overconfident. Let her say something incriminating. Like what happened to the other families. The ones who've been paying you money they don't owe for years. Patricia turned back to face her, and now the mask was completely off. The friendly hostess was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. Those families made a choice. They could pay a small fee for the privilege of living in a well-maintained community, or they could face the consequences of none. But they were never part of your HOA. You know that. Membership is determined by the board, not by outdated paperwork. The community has evolved, Mrs. Martinez. The boundaries have expanded to serve the greater good. Whose greater good? Yours. Patricia walked back to her chair, moving with the confidence of a predator who knows her prey is trapped. Let me explain something to you, Ms. Martinez. I've lived in this community for 15 years. I've watched property values rise. I've seen crime rates fall. I've built something beautiful and stable. And I'm not going to let some self-righteous teacher destroy what I've worked so hard to create. Sarah's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. So you've been stealing money from families who were never part of your association. I've been collecting reasonable fees for services rendered. The fact that some people are too stupid to understand the legal structure is not my problem. What about the bribes, the kickbacks to city officials? Patricia smiled, the expression genuinely amused. Ms. Martinez, you have such a limited understanding of how the world works. I don't pay bribes. I make charitable contributions to worthy causes. I attend fundraisers. I support candidates who understand the importance of strong community standards, and they help you enforce fake HOA rules in return. They help me maintain order. Do you have any idea what this neighborhood was like before I took control? Property values were stagnant. There were cars parked on lawns. People were building whatever ugly additions they wanted without any oversight. Patricia's voice was rising now, passionate about her mission. I brought standards. I brought order. I brought prosperity. You brought fear. I brought consequences, something your generation seems to have forgotten the meaning of. Sarah stood up, letting her own anger show. And when people fought back, when they refused to pay your fake fees, then they learned that actions have consequences. Patricia's eyes were bright with malice now. Take your friend Ms. Santos. She could have paid a small fine and moved on with her life. Instead, she chose to listen to troublemakers like you. Now look what's happened to her. You tried to burn down her house. You could have killed her children. Patricia shrugged. I didn't do anything. But I will say this: people who refuse to cooperate with legitimate authority often find themselves facing unfortunate circumstances. Sometimes their businesses fail. Sometimes they face tax audits. Sometimes their children are removed from unsafe homes. And sometimes, double quotes, she paused meaningfully. Sometimes accidents happen. Sarah felt sick to her stomach, but she pressed on. You're admitting to threatening families? I'm simply observing that people who make enemies tend to have bad luck. And Ms. Martinez, you've made quite a few enemies recently. Are you threatening me? Patricia stood and walked to the door, clearly ending the conversation. I'm advising you, drop this crusade of yours. Stop filling your neighbors' heads with nonsense about fake HOAs and illegal fees. Pay your fines, get your pool approved through proper channels, and learn to live within the system. And if I don't, Patricia opened the door and smiled. Expression, cold as winter. Then I suppose you'll discover what happens to people who think they can take on forces beyond their understanding. As Sarah walked back to her car, she could feel Patricia watching her from the window.